and see where we get to in terms of time. Daisy, I think you were first.
Hi, Ivan. Yeah, thank you, Martin.
Hello.
I when you were talking about how physical the screen set's just as important as the physical set, I completely get that. And in Profile, I think it was, they were able to shoot different locations. I think it was via video call. But in regards to the setup, like on screen, the desktop, I wondered, like, how has that been tested, like internet and connection wise? Because I have a few ideas where that would kind of, it'd be a bit difficult to have like that kind of access to solid internet and signal, but it'd be part of like the story. So I just wanted to know, like, would that be possible to work or?
I don't think I got your point totally. If you can rephrase it a bit, just keeping in mind that that it's about Profile, which I watched just one time. But if you can rephrase it, I'll try to.
Yeah. So like Profile was shot in 2 different places, like the
Yeah.
video, like the video bit. But I wondered if you were to kind of do something similar to that, or have the desktop in a different location where like internet access and signal was harder to maintain. How would that affect like the production? Like, would it still be possible to like direct and produce, or would it like have serious limitations, like be hard to
Oh.
make?
If you are talking mostly about the technical part of it, yes, I know about this problem, and to be honest, this is what we're facing every time when we're shooting in a, even in the same place. For example, the lockdown was shot in the same place, and this technical problem was also there. Because what we needed to do, the majority of the scenes were shot in one apartment, but there was a scene with a conversation with the male, with the main female character's mom, who was shot in her apartment, so somewhere in the different part of the city, and her internet connection was bad, and what we were trying to do is to do the following. We gave her instructions that she should record her screen, and we were recording our screen also, if I remember it right. And afterwards, what we needed to do is to combine on a post-production her screen, which was good, and our screen, which was good, and just to fix some differences on post-production. So usually this can be the problem, of course, with an internet connection. Yeah, sorry for this cat, as I told you. So sorry, he's just getting all the attention because he's just in front of me. Yeah, this can be the problem. As I know about Profile, they were shooting this Syria part somewhere in Cyprus, if I'm not mistaken. And if I'm not mistaken, again, they did it finally separately. So they shot the part of the dialogue, like her phrases, the female leading character phrases, and his phrases, and then did the edit to make it look like a real dialogue. I would never recommend this, because on the early stage of me working on Screenlife, I thought that's the best way. Usually you need so much post-production, you need so much editing abilities, and it still looks like something very artificial when you are not recording the real dialogue. Because the way we are talking like this now, even with the fact that this is for the last minute, that's my monologue, every phrase of me leads to your reaction, and all these micro reactions make it real. When you are recording this separately, all these micro reactions are losing, so there is a total fake, and you need to be Timur Bekmambetov to edit this in the way that it looks natural, or you just need a lot of time to do this. So even with the fact that somewhere internet connection is better, somewhere it's not, it's always better to record the dialogue in reality. So I would recommend to do this in 100% cases. Even with the fact that, for example, as I see you for the moment, there are some little stops on the camera, but they look natural. They look natural. Lip sync also looks natural when it's losing the tempo sometimes. All these little freezing moments looks natural, but when it comes to the authenticity, it's all real in our dialogue now. And when you are recording separately, it's almost never real, unfortunately.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can I go to Luke next and then Tom? Luke.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Ivan.
Hello.
That was actually one of my questions I was going to ask was, do you just sort of essentially just record the screens real time, or do you sort of put GoPros on the top? And obviously you've kind of answered that, I guess.
Yeah. What I would add to what I already said is that, for example, the lockdown series. Maybe if we will have time, I'll show the part of it. What we've done, we never used the GoPro in this TV series because we were shooting in the friendly apartment, let's say, and we were shooting everything on smartphones. Samsung was the sponsor of it, so we were really shooting all the stuff on the two Samsung smartphones. They're flagman smartphones. So we were using the real cameras, with one difference, one practical difference. What we needed is, that frontal camera is worse than external camera. So what we did is we used two smartphones and did it like this with the two external cameras for the actor to see himself, and at the same time he was shooting himself on a external camera somehow. That there was some technical stuff, I don't know, but the quality of it was better because of this technical trick, and we managed to shoot everything on the real smartphones without GoPros, and we recorded all the dialogues in the moment when they were leading them, when they were telling their phrases.
So you just had a camera holding the phone pointing back at the actor. Would that just work?
Yeah. So what we actually did, that was very interesting shooting. That's why we shot like 1 hour and 10 minutes, I think, 1 hour and 15 minutes of the final edit in 3 days only. So we shot much more, of course, but we shot like a feature film in 3 days because we were doing this on the real phones. And what was done there, that's a very specific thing. We made heroes, we just switched the record thing, made them talk. We left them in their separate room, let's say playing the film set. We were in the next room behind the door, and they were recording this. And after each take, we were just sitting together and watching this and giving some instructions. Then we were leaving the room leaving them with some instructions, and then they did it again. Then we watched again. Oh yes, this is a good take. We will take this. Let's go further. So that was the process of filming in this particular case of lockdown.
So you just screen record the conversation from the actual phone itself then?
When it was a conversation, we screen recorded it. Yes. When it was there was a moment of just shooting someone. They were shooting themselves. In some scenes, I'll maybe show later. we were just using the phone as any of us would do when we were shooting ourselves. So, yeah.
So the only other final question, sorry everybody, the only other thing I was going to sort of say as well is the when you sort of blow up the footage to put it on a cinema screen, has there been any kind of challenges to the quality of the video once you try and blow that up?
We were shooting. It never came to the cinema screen because it was web series and it was a bit easier for us. Anyway, we did even the color correction, like a proper color correction for this. But anyway, we were shooting on 4K, so the quality of it was quite good. The only thing was what wasn't good enough were the night scenes within the apartments when the phone we were shooting on. Of course, it doesn't have enough camera quality to shoot properly at night. So there was some grain, but in our case, you know, the grain is also realistic when it comes to night smartphone made videos. So it wasn't, as I said before, the beauty of it is not in the perfect shot and the perfectly organized set. The beauty of it is this reality where you are diving with these movies. So that was enough. 4K is quite enough quality for even the cinema screen, I guess. Especially when they know the format. Our audience know the format. We were not tricking them. It was said from the very beginning that this was shot on a Samsung Galaxy. Of course, this was. Of course, that was money for this. So people knew that it was shot on a smartphone, and they were surprised how good it's short. It was short. It was shot on it. So the quality was enough, and it was a very intimate little story. So it wasn't the huge task to shoot some dinosaurs or the prehistoric creatures. Why it's always about prehistoric or aliens, let's say, on it. So it was a story about a couple who with the smartphones. So it was enough. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Luke. Right, I'm going to take a question from Tom, and then I think it'd be quite nice if Ivan shared one of his films with us and showed us some and took us through it. So before we do that, just Tom, you've been waiting a long time you were waiting before the break for a question. Tom.
Sure, great. Hey, Ivan.
Hello.
My question's all about representing time passing in Screenlife. You were talking about authenticity a lot, and I think a lot of the way we use our mobile phone, for example, is you open an app, you go to another app, you go to another app, but then you close your phone and you interact with the physical world a bit, and then you come back to your phone afterwards. And I know that Unfriended, the first film, is just one session. So it plays out in real time. There's no cut. And so I was wondering about language that has been explored in terms of beginning scenes, ending scenes. Like, are there fades to black? Are there establishing shots? What are the analogs of those things in Screenlife? And then a sort of follow-on question about time is, have there been any use of flashbacks or non-linear types of storytelling that can work?
Thank you for question. Because when you started talking about the time passing, I thought, oh, it's an easy question. For example, when it comes to smartphone, you are switching the phone off, and then it appears, and there is a new date, and there is a new time. Yeah, and you see, so that's very natural. When it comes to desktop, it goes, for example, in the Act of Bravery movie. There is a moment when the main hero he left the room, and then his computer goes into the how it's called the black screen with some waves, you know, all this stuff, and then he wakes up again. It wakes up the computer, and the new heroine is sitting in front of it, and the time passes. So this is quite simple, and you just need to look at your desktop and smartphone. Someone I know uses the calendar. It's artificial way of showing how time passes, but it can be used, I guess, when the calendar and there is, for example, 18th of January, and we go to Google Calendar and we move to 18th of March, for example. Yeah, and this is an artificial way, but it's still Screenlife type of way of showing how time passes. But when it comes to flashbacks, that's a good question, because the only way I was writing the flashbacks type of things were the files in the photo library, for example, photo and video library. And you can use this because Screenlife is very close to found footage type of movies. You know, your computer contains a lot of information about your past. So instead of using the flashbacks, you adjust your hero, of course, and it should be logical in his behavior. He goes to the certain folder with his family, for example, happy family moment 10 years ago. He gets into it, he opens the file, he does the full screen, and we see the flashback. So this is how it pretty much works in the these flashbacks in the Screenlife movies. This is one of the ways, but it's again, it's on the surface, because this is how I would do stuff on my smartphone or computer if I wanted to go to the past. Another thing which is very good, so sorry for not stopping this, and I use this in the different horror I've written. It's not a Screenlife horror, but in smartphones there is a very cool thing called "This Day 5 years ago." You know, it's an iPhone, "This day 5 years ago," or "The beautiful memories," or something like that. And you are switching it on, and you push play, and with the guitar, like calm guitar music or inspiring guitar music, you see some events from 5 years ago. Yeah, this is again one more element of flashbacks you can use, one more tool.
Great, thanks.
Did I answer?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Just before you show your film, Andrew, did you have a question? You've had your hand up for a long time. Go on. You're on mute, Andrew.
Sorry, I was just looking for the unmute button. Hi, sorry, really quick question, which might be very controversial, I don't know. In terms of format, you were saying that you've got desktops and phones for Screenlife videos. What would your opinion be on Google Glass? So augmented reality, essentially. So you have that personal thing. You're seeing the emails come up. You're seeing what they're sort of typing and all that that everyone else doesn't see. So you're seeing their personal life, but at the same time, you're still seeing real world as well. I mean, or is that a different genre? Is that outside of the scope of Screenlife?
That's again the very interesting question. Me personally, I know what Timur would say. Timur would say, yeah, let's do this. And for example, as you know, Ilyana Shuler, who is a Russian-based director who did hardcore movie made from the first person, first point of view. Yeah, you know, he did an action film which was all based on this view. They would say, yeah, go for it. For me, you know, I have one doubt about this. Of course, it's a very cool way of cool start for your story. It's very interesting, and I think the whole story can be told like this, with all augmented reality and different notifications, information. And also, another thing is that we've made this web series called Alisa, which I've mentioned before, which was all made with one camera inside the car, looking inside the car, on the dashboard with a voice assistant. But it wasn't Screenlife because it was just an aesthetical way of showing, of telling our stories. With the Google Glass, I think it's closer to Screenlife because you can show the real conversations. You can maybe get into the searching of something. You can explore the character of your hero. Yes, I think so. The only doubt I have here is that this technology is not familiar to the majority of viewers, as I know. So for them, it will be like something new they don't know how to interact with. They don't know the rules of this world. That's why it's harder to relate to this. So the other things. And I would, being on your place, I would check. I would check if this movie was made. Maybe it was a short film with the Google Glass, because I read somewhere recently about the maybe short film made in Google Glass. Totally. But I can say that that's a Screenlife, which we were talking about today, like the familiar, authentic, believable, based on the familiar human behavior, insights, and so on. Because Google Glass was very ambitious and cool idea, but I don't think it's very not popular, but well known now. Are you wearing ones now?
No.
No? Okay.
That'd be cool if I was.
Yeah.
Or maybe I am. You'll never know. It's only me that sees the inside.
Yes, exactly. Your ones looks cooler than original Google Glass. So don't be sad about this.
Thank you.
Can I just say something on the Google Glass thing, and where it may become a little bit more difficult is my understanding of the way that the format works is through the screen of the protagonist. So if you're going to use Google Glass as your screen, then it would probably be more like a first person point of view film, because you'd have your screen telling you different things here, and it would just be your POV, which is a little bit like Hardcore Henry, which is a little bit difficult to watch with the POV. But if you had him using his screen as his glass, it could be interesting, but then again, it could be a little bit confusing, because you'd have two things going on. You'd have the POV, and then you'd have the screen. Do you get me?
Yeah, we've done it, haven't we, with the one discussion Joanne and I had with Maria on the Google Glass side of things, was how you can incorporate it. I think we're trying to use it, but we're trying to incorporate it within a call. So our characters try and break into somewhere, so they use a Google Glass set to show their perspective in a more secretive way. So I think there's different ways, but I think it's difficult working a natural way to get it in there.
Yeah, but you will need to create the whole interface from scratch, I guess. Not record it, but to create it. But anyway, it's interesting visual technique, and some producers are like catching this visual stuff more than like psychologically proven stuff and so on, psychologically deep stuff. So why not? The same is with VR. That VR can be added, for example, as one of the technique to this type of movies. And I saw saw the script yesterday, which had the VR part included in it. So it's basically the Screenlife movie, but the VR part is the part of it. Let's say. So it's developing every time, and the main thing here is to keep to understand the basis of Screenlife, or all these parts about the believability, authenticity, and so on, and then to go from it or not go. Because anyway, it's original as it is for the moment, as a technique and language.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ivan. Just to play us out for your part of this evening, do you want to show us something? Want to share?
I'll try. You know, this is a version with the subtitles. Maybe it will be a bit difficult for you to get, because it's not the first episode of the what's called lockdown series, but I think it's more different in terms of elements we use there. So if you're ready to watch something with subtitles, and I'll try to get it from Vimeo if I can. Yeah, I think I can. We can watch one episode, if you don't mind. It's like 10 minutes or something. Do you? Or not? Well, let's go home. Yeah. Okay, I'm switching it on. You'll tell me if it works or not. I hell. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just play. Yeah.
Oh. Do you see the subtitles?
Yeah.
No? Yeah?
Yes.
It's down there on the black box.
There's no sound though. There's
Oh,
no
really?
audio.
No sound.
Yeah.
You're very polite to look at this without any sound. Yeah. Let's go. Whoa. I guess because it's Vimeo, it's maybe impossible to
Yeah. I
hear
think
the sound. Sorry for this. Sorry.
no, it's okay. I think we should maybe catch up with it anyway, because that would, I'm just looking at the time, it's now 7:20. We've kept you for probably about 45 minutes, 50 minutes longer than we were supposed to. So I
No, it's fine.
really thank you for that. It's been a great presentation, but I think it would be probably work better if we watched it as part of as the course goes through, as you know, over the next 12 weeks, because we've got another presentation and we wanted to do 20 minutes, half hour in our breakout room, so we could talk about a pitching session that we've got set up for next week with Maria. She's going to be here with us. So I would just like to thank you very much for that. It was really informative and another building block to us understanding a little bit more about the format. So thanks, Ivan.
Thank
It was
you.
great, and I really look forward to talking to you more over the next forever.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you very much for your questions. And that was really very interesting for me. And some questions gave me a lot to think about to me myself. So yeah, it was a very good session. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you, Ivan.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. Do send us a link. We'll sort out a link to watch the lockdown. Later on. We'll speak later.
I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Right, that brings us to the next part of the evening. Nick, are you ready?
I am.
Art of digital storytelling.
Can you see the screen all right? Is it all okay?
Yeah, that's all good.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. So Ivan's brilliant presentation there really covered a lot about the ethos and belief system behind Screenlife. So here we're going to cover the storytelling transition we go through as filmmakers with this new language, what that means to us as storytellers, and how we can make best use out of those narratives we might want to tell. What I'd really like to do today is challenge some of the potential preconceptions about Screenlife. You might not necessarily have any, but we're at least going to look at some of the preconceptions potentially I had when I came into it, and discuss how we can innovate them as early adopters. Also, hopefully this will complement some of the things that Ivan said there, so there should be a bit of correlation. So great. Let's see if we can move on. Perfect. So, to quote David Mamet, we attempt to unite groups of people and establish stories, ourselves and our identity through stories we tell. This primal instinct has been with us since prehistoric times, when at the end of the day we would gather around the campfire and share stories. Today, the campfire has been replaced by the computer and the television, but these devices represent the same attempt to unify us as a species through the telling of tales and narratives. So that's a nice quote there from David Mamet, which I think kind of puts that whole feeling. I think this idea of being around the campfire, around the TV, around the cinema, a phone, stories travel through us digitally. News, fake news or real, the messages we send and videos we share with friends. Our personal stories are shared on a timeline as our lives are shown on social media. The campfire is right here online, and at times it gets out of control, people disagreeing on the meaning on something, chaos erupts, as we're seeing on Twitter. We kind of unite the tribe and also see it divided online. And because of self-awareness and what have you, now today, we start to pick it apart and discuss the moral choices we make. In Will Storr's science book, Science of Storytelling, we hear that research suggests that humans evolved language as a primal way of swapping social information back when we were living in Stone Ages. In other words, we'd gossip, we'd tell tales about the moral rights and wrongs of other people, punish the bad behaviour, reward the good, hopefully then to keep everyone in the tribe in check. Stories behind help complex human culture evolve and emerge. And today we're doing the same with digital storytelling. It's helping us work out the moral compass of the online world. So moral questions are at the heart of the story. Almost every film is a political act in some ways, if you look at it that way. You're saying, here are the morals we have as a society, believe in, here are the obstacles that we face, and we test our morals. We're saying how society should be, how it can be through our stories. In the same way a caveman would go, today we saw a mountain lion, did you hear about that? Keep away from it, it's dangerous. Or a mother would say to a child, let me tell you a little story about a rabbit who didn't do his homework. It's all the same. We're expressing morals and ethics in Screenlife. It might be careful of hackers, be careful of what you say, how you treat others online. You get the point. Now, translating film stories which have been told means the tools are new. The world is different. Love letters are now text, which for hopeless romantics like me, it's worrying. But, a heist like Widows doesn't necessarily require the character to get friendly with the architect to get the blueprints. You can just Google it. Armed robbery would more likely be a potential hack. So being aware of those new realities we face digitally is what makes Screenlife more relevant. So moving into digital storytelling, a few things are immediately altered. Our locations become websites. Some of the obstacles our characters face are digital related. Dialogue is now written as well as spoken. And action is often through the cursor movement. It can be jarring at first as kind of a writer, writing the plot, writing the script. But because we're so used to the online world, it becomes second nature after a couple of days of working it out. This is just a note to say, you don't have to feel limited by the nature of linear storytelling. An Inception style film could be made in Screenlife. We can use clever tricks to play with the audience and their expectations of what an audience may perceive of story and the conventions we have. One thing Ivan mentioned brilliantly in his presentation was that the intros to some Screenlife films are a password being texted and put into a computer. Now, to show you another way is to show you a scene from Steve Jobs, as many of you probably have watched, how you can jump straight into the action in Screenlife. You don't necessarily have to follow the conventions that have come before. So I'll just play this.
Screen says it's an unimplemented trap, but the error code is wrong. It's a system error.
So what's the upshot?
It's not going to say hello.
It absolutely is going to say hello.
It's nobody's fault. It's a system error.
You built the voice demo.
The voice demo is
Your
flaky. I've been
voice is
telling you
down.
that this thing is overbuilt.
It worked last night. It worked the night before that. It worked 3 hours
It's
ago.
not working now, so just skip over the voice demo.
Fuck you.
Skip over. Everything else is working. Skip over the voice demo.
We needed to say hello.
You're not hearing me. It's not going to say hello.
So you can see there how you can just jump straight into the action, and you don't have to feel that limitation that of what films have come before. Just could someone give me a thumbs up to tell me whether the sound was working then? I've tried my best to. It's working? Good. I'm really glad. So could your film start with dialogue or action midpoint? That's what I'm currently trying to do with my film to make it a bit different. Oh.
Screen.
So one question that often comes up about Screenlife is, if we're making a Screenlife film, am I limited to tell the story in a modern setting? Digital devices haven't been around since the Roman era or World War II. Well, this film here that I'm about to just show you a clip from really disproves that idea. And it's a really beautiful and heartbreaking concept. The concept is, what if a young girl during the Holocaust had a mobile phone to document her life on Instagram, the way that some young people do today? Now, at first, it seems kind of like a controversial idea, but when you start to think about it, this is a way of telling young people who can't imagine that world, who haven't grown up in a war zone or haven't experienced it, to put them in the shoes so they can relate to it. It captures something that documentaries can't. You know, you relate to her even more. Now, this page here that I'm about to show you has 1.2 million followers. To reach so many people for such an important tale, where a cinematic release, or on, you know, this was completely released on Instagram, a cinema release maybe of that premise wouldn't have reached 1.2 million people necessarily. So it really does attract that demographic. Not only is it a great way to encapsulate a modern audience to this story, it's also a true story, except the mobile phone, as you'll see here.
Hi, my name's Eva. Welcome to my page. Follow me. This is my page for random thoughts, crushes, my hashtag BFFs. One day, I'll be a famous reporter. But for now, I live with my grandparents.
Now you make a wish.
Dirty Jew. Hitler conquered us like that. You have to go back immediately. Jews can no longer own businesses.
Oh, so I think that gives a really nice demonstration. Was the audio level all right there? Perfect, great. Equally, you can always go backwards in time with your interface too. You know, you could go back to the old IBM or Macintosh computers. This is obviously more tricky and maybe not as possible on a low budget, but anything is possible. And even as Ivan has said, you can go into the future too. But through the ages, how we use technology evolves. So does how we use it too. So when examining who a character is and how they use the internet, are they aware of the consequences and permanence of the online world? I mean, to prove here, I've put some awful Facebook things that I put on in 2011 that haven't timed well, but it just demonstrates we're maturing. And I think that filmmaking and how we tell stories will evolve with that. So making ourselves aware of how those characters react and how young people use the internet is really key if we're telling a story about that demographic. Let's take a random character we probably all know. Imagine if you knew what music Luke Skywalker listened to. Probably not the Darth Vader theme tune. What books did he read? What things does he hide from others? Who does he communicate with? Does he clear his search history? Is he tech savvy? We'd know him so well this way. We'd understand his desires and his fears. This is how we develop character in Screenlife. We can learn everything in quick succession without any verbal exposition. Let's take it a step further. What social media does he use? What are his views on politics? Is he a supporter of the Rebel Alliance or the Empire? Films he rates, websites he visits, and how does he learn about the Force? Probably tutorials on how to be a Jedi on YouTube. You get the point. Digital storytelling allows an intimate eye into everything about a person. You can see their soul, or at least a version of it, of what they externalize or hide privately. If a character promises they won't do something on a call with a friend, then immediately ends the call and does it, we learn so much more. Goals are quick and easy to show, and so are the obstacles. In the same way, you might have an establishing shot. You can establish that very quickly, the setting, the theme, the tone, just through a quick image or search. It's a beautiful new way of telling stories this way. As is, there are two major types of Screenlife films. Now, Ivan spoke about them throughout. Let's label them in the way that they are in the Screenlife Bible. The first one, we don't tell the audience where to look at. This is standard Screenlife. That's how Unfriended was done. There's no artificial zooms, no score, no traditional soundtrack. This is old school. The story tends to unfold in real time, and all of the sounds we hear are diegetic from the computer. Music comes from Spotify and what have you. But through searching, Evolved Screenlife was born, a more complex technique of controlling the audience's attention, with the possibility of different angles, using zooms and non-diegetic music outside of the world of the character. Now, moving forward, Joanne, my co-writer, and I are trying to create a new form of Screenlife, which is interactive Screenlife. There's a lot of work to be done there, but it allows the audience to jump in and make the character's decisions, which makes sense because in Screenlife, you're the POV, you're the character, the eyes and ears. But it's still being explored, and we're still working out how much interactivity that may involve. One thing that is apparent if you watch Unfriended, then immediately watch Searching After, is that there's a clear authorship, a painter moving a brush in a different direction with the same set of paints, saying something new. What will become apparent over the next few years with Screenlife as it grows, and even throughout this course as we make our films here, is that just like traditional films, artistic vision, film to film, is wildly unique based on the director and of course the team around them. I have this belief that one day there will be a Ken Loach of Screenlife, a Quentin Tarantino, with different visual languages which become unique staples. Where am I at? Screenlife isn't just supernatural horror or missing daughter in a thriller. It can mirror other art, a Chagall versus a Dali or what have you. There's room to have a surreal Screenlife film, as I was mentioning in the group chat, where it's very trippy. Maybe it's very David Lynch or very Tim Burton in colour, style and palette. Maybe the characters speak in unique Aaron Sorkin or Stanislavski dialogue, or more over the top and Brechtian. I mention this as I often lose myself in the idea that my own work has to mirror or replicate other Screenlife films. But no, it's your own artistic voice. And the way to keep Screenlife alive is to have wildly different films with unique, different artists behind them. So digital storytelling doesn't have to have a recipe or a lookbook. It can be anything. So Ivan and myself maybe want a realistic beauty for what we want to see in Screenlife, but other artists may see a more surreal vision, which brings us to beauty. Now, we talked about this a fair bit. We shared a similar view, myself and Ivan, of how that could be incorporated. But we can make things beautiful if we choose to in Screenlife. Can we? Of course, yes. Has it been fully explored in Screenlife? Maybe not. Because this platform is still relatively new, it's working out how, and as we move forward, find new ways. The more voices brought to this that think differently, the more likely we can capture what Joanne referenced last week as that Lumiere moment. Screenlife films can look beautiful and still be realistic. We can still have those iconic moments. You can see those on the left, the Gone with the Wind going off into the sun, the Solaris walking through the tall grass. Here's a moment from Dead of Night that Joanne mentioned to me. I thought it was a great example that sums up that beauty perfectly in a realistic sense. It's just a rolling clip, but just that nice little backlight, it's a great way of capturing that scale in the world. Now it's twofold. It's pretty multifaceted, actually. Firstly, the camera, the framing, the lighting, what's behind the character, their production design, costume, makeup, the world they inhabit. So in the middle here, you can see a reference image that I've stolen from my film. I really like the lighting in the background. You can also play with handheld or static. We're static now, but maybe as she's using here, it's a little bit of a handheld camera movement. And that cinematography can come to light. I mean, beauty that is realistic is very possible and doesn't necessarily have to feel like, oh, go stand in front of that sunset and look sad while he's walking away. I mean, who's ever had a breakup where it's in front of a coincidentally beautiful sunset? But as on the previous slide, maybe you decide that you want to be that way and be more surreal. Then secondly, the interface. This requires production design in itself. The composition of how that feels, where a tab is placed while another is open. The framing and zoom we make to make the audience see a particular moment. It might seem simple. You place this here, does it feels natural? I'd have it here. But you can make a desktop look incredible. How can it feel organic and beautiful? What's the background image, the font you choose? This is why editors in Screenlife are often credited as directors of photography. There's so much cinematography in this frame alone. And it's cinematography outside of that real world that really captures what is Screenlife. So experimenting with those and breaking those rules is really key. So this is one example of what I've done for my film. Because the characters are breaking into a political building, the planning of that, the heist, can look visually stimulating. So what I've done here is I've split up my screen in different ways. So this is very Steven Soderbergh's Ocean's 8, if any of you've watched it. Each screen within one frame can show something new. So I can show the audience the character looking at maps, messaging each other, downloading, uploading, hacking on one screen, all captured in one frame. So it's what is a pretty old school film technique with the Ocean's 11-8, whatever number that was. And moving that into Screenlife is still possible. Here's another one. So I joke about sunset and sunrise. Here's it in another context. So when I'm showing the planning stage of the heist, I can create a visual time lapse of the characters. We can speed up the entire film if we have to. It's a lovely setting and means that I can make the story go faster while also making it visually stimulating. And this, I've got this as my background, whatever they call it. There is beauty in the pixels of the online world. We just have to look past the mundane ways we currently see it and then explore beyond it. Now, editing in Screenlife films means we don't have the typical effects we normally have in a film. Our reactions may be visible from likes or dislikes as reactions to post of what a character says. But this is the great thing. Your character's reaction, if you so choose to do so, is clearly visible in every moment. As Ivan mentioned, you can control the audience's eyes to look at the mouse and then back to the face as they stray away. The whole way we look into information, look at images is completely different with Screenlife. You don't need to zoom. You don't need to use Evolve Screenlife. If you're a strong enough director and have a great enough team, you can navigate someone's eyes just within that full frame. This is kind of necessary for an audience to stay engaged. Ironically, this whole thing of us as filmmakers being worried that people will grab their phones while watching a film. Well, in Screenlife, you really have to pay attention to every detail. So maybe ironically, the way that we as filmmakers can get rid of people looking at the phones while watching a film is Screenlife. That's just a thought. Now, we all know that moment when you're watching a film and you go, don't do it. Don't go to the dark side. Don't open that door. Don't say yes. You're being tricked, don't you see? It happens a lot in thrillers. The audience feels this frustration and inability to stop the character from making terrible decisions, which we believe we'd never do if we were in that situation. While all non-interactive storytelling is in some ways passive for an audience, Screenlife allows the audience to be on the verge of making those possibilities in their mind. So we have to feed that. We have to feed them that information. The audience gets to see the character's thought process by the mouse hovering over the delete button. We can see their thinking. So by really playing with the audience in that trickery, we get to play with the true power of Screenlife because we see all the tools that they're using. You all know the old famous great scene, the court case. You've got the lawyer walking up the steps of the court building, telling the client, act cool. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. I think in those scenes, as an audience, we typically tend to flinch. We kind of go, there's something wrong here. They've had this meeting a week ago. this isn't realistic. This is the kind of logic we have to combat with any kind of filmmaking, so audience feel that it's real. This is especially key in Screenlife. So as one example, Timur screened a Screenlife film to a focus group and asked everyone to tell them what they thought of it afterwards. They all liked it, but he kind of thought they were not telling him something. Finally, one person turned to Timur and said, the main character, when he was sending that email, he didn't put a dot between Gmail and .com. So how did the recipient get the email? These tiny details got easily noticed by the audience since they know this world so well. This is especially true in Screenlife, even more than traditional filmmaking, because the audience is tracking every detail. Audiences understand the perimeters of the online world and have a keen eye. They might not know the laws of a police cell interview, and therefore the writer in a traditional film has more room. Sadly, in Screenlife, we can't get away with it as much. The devil's in the detail. So that's not a limitation as per se. The example of where this rule was broken was in Searching. At the final frame, pretty much in the last scene, there's a hide file button. Now that's not actually in a Mac, but anything much bigger than that, I think the audience would have said that doesn't seem quite right. So we have to be aware of it. Now here's one challenge we face that I only kind of considered recently. You know that thing in a film where a character doesn't use their phone, they don't just pick it up and solve the issue. It kind of would easily solve the plot. This is the issue we have with Screenlife in an opposite sense. Why doesn't the character just log off? Why don't they just walk out of the room and not touch the computer? Would the story be solved? Would the plot be finished? That was one of the common criticisms with Unfriended. So I'm going to pass you on to Mark Commode, who brilliantly described the issue at hand with Unfriended. And he talks about why people were saying that, but why that was wrong. I think this is really key.
And I think your response to it will be to some extent conditioned by how you feel about that culture. If you are an older member of the audience, one of the things that can happen is you can start to feel panicky about firstly how much there is to keep up with, where to look, where to, and also the sense of actually these teens being completely dexterous with this. It's like they're not even thinking about the way in which it's working. What makes the film work, however, is that if you are at home with the culture, and if you are at home with the, with the online interaction, what it does is says something quite interesting about cyberbullying, because many people have seen the trailer say, okay, you're being stalked through the internet, well, just log off. And the smart thing about the plot is that at several points, they all tell you, they just say, log off, just turn your computer off, walk away. But the point is they can't. Why can't they? Because they're addicted to the thing. And I think what's interesting about it is that quite apart from being a horror movie which has the strength of its formal conviction.
So trying to pause that. So I haven't watched that. What I think he says so perfectly is that the rationale of having the characters not leave their computers is about culture and how they feel trapped by technology. If we're in a similar circumstance with our own stories, how and why is that the case? Is it deep-rooted and is it justifiable? It's not a simple answer. There's no direct way of doing it, but it's just worth considering and thinking about with our own films. So with what Mark Moe just said there, Unfriended captured a culture, a microcosm, and feeling that isn't directly mentioned. But you feel the essence of it. With Screenlife, all those beautiful poetic ideas we have about storytelling where a film can be allegorical and stand for an idea indirectly can still be done. Some people who are skeptical about the platform believe that Screenlife can't achieve that, evoke that subtext in the storytelling that is deeply intelligent. These films can mean something more than what's on the surface, even if it's not clear. Here are some examples in traditional films. So Mother is about climate change and Mother Earth, religion versus people. The Invisible Man is about gaslighting, and Midsummer is essentially a breakup film. Searching, on the other hand, isn't just a missing girl story. It's her father realizing he doesn't understand his daughter and her hidden world after her mum dies. That fear is hidden in the internet. covered by a smile. Unfriended is really an interesting one because it kind of flips the antagonist protagonist. Your antagonist is actually the protagonist of the film in one way of looking at it, fighting against the bullying. So I think it's worth considering this as we move forward. So for instance, if we made a Screenlife film about a married couple who live in a long distance relationship with opposing views on politics, one Labour, one Conservative, strong for years, and then suddenly start to disagree on things, you could make a Screenlife film about post-Brexit Britain or something like that. It can be so much more. You can be intelligent and commercial. We can say something about the culture. So if you're a filmmaker who has concerns that your art is in some ways limited by this language, in some ways it can be freeing. Now, filmmakers clearly have had some fun here with Screenlife, in the same way that Kubrick might have hidden clues about, underground cults to moon landings in numbers and symbols. Screenlife filmmakers have been trying to do the same with planting Easter eggs. There's thousands in Searching. Some can even tell you the ending before you get there, or foreshadow what's coming in the story. So Searching did this with the picture, and Dark Web does this with fun references to Putin and other horror films just through Wi-Fi names. In digital storytelling, you can place these things everywhere. If you're in post and you want to say something interesting that you hadn't considered in the script, maybe the world's change, maybe you want to add these things for those viewers that want to have a keen eye and analyze those things. In telling our stories, considering the operating system and interface is key. It's almost like choosing whether to shoot on film versus digital or different stocks. All have different feels and will say something different about your protagonist. The big three are, of course, Linux, Windows, and Mac. Screenlife has typically taken place on Macs, but it doesn't mean you have to. If you want to look at the worldwide market share, which I've got an example of here, Windows has a huge market share over Mac, despite Screenlife films being predominantly Mac. But also I think it's worth mentioning on this graph, if you were to change that to UK or just US rather than global, there's a little bit of a difference there. Mac has a larger market share than what is demonstrated here. If you're doing it for a film for a global market, though, Windows may be king. Of course, on the mobile phone market, it's slightly different, with Apple having a larger proportion than what's shown here. But you can still have Androids, Nokias, I don't know. So really, it depends what you think your protagonist would use and what works for you as an artist. I mean, even I'm using Apple Watch in my story as a random thing, so you can really play with it. The viewing of your story is a little bit like considering if your story should be told in front of a, amphitheater or a coliseum, a black box theater or a small campfire with a few tents. Your end of line location and device could be anything from a cinema screen, a mobile phone, in vertical or horizontal, a laptop or a home TV. I think considering this is key when in production. If you have a smaller text, is that going to be viewable on a mobile phone? What's the aspect ratio? These are things we have to think about. If your film's a crowd pleaser, maybe cinema screens is your end goal. For the purist, this may be the feeling of, I want cinema or what have you, but you need to probably consider what is best for your story, not your own core beliefs. If it's small and intimate, maybe one person watching it in the bedroom is right. And if it's big and adventurous, maybe the cinema. But where is this going to be watched by the most amount of people? Which is why Eva Stories is a great example on the Instagram with the 1.2 million followers. Is that going to have a larger audience on other platforms? Obviously, commerce will always win out on this with distribution deals and what have you. But still, I think it's worth considering. Also, bear in mind, is your story a TV series or a film? It doesn't have to be a film, as we've discussed here. It may be stronger in a streaming market, which is growing and growing, or I don't know if it's been done yet, but broadcast TV. If first ever Screenlife film and broadcast TV would be a great thing. Now, how we tell stories, this I find fascinating. How these stories are told in the same way legends in early ages of humans and somehow made it around the world and have been whispered. How stories travel. Screenlife has the upper hand of captivating the world. This is possibly the best way to explain. The production budget for Unfriended was around $1 million. The budget for its adaptations for foreign markets, just through translation generally, cost 2 times more of that. So that's 10 different foreign languages that they translated it for. Editors can translate every line of dialogue written as text or emails or even a website. This isn't just a language issue, it's a cultural one as a whole. For example, if we adapt a film for a Chinese market, you should understand that that potential audience will never have used or even heard of Google before. They have their own search engine. So that's a huge cultural shift that we have to think about. It's necessary to completely kind of remake a Screenlife film for those certain cultures that don't see them, which is where it has the benefit of other films. If you make a traditional film, not in Screenlife, if you're making it about a suburban town in, the US, some cultures understand or relate to that. Therefore, they don't feel catered to, and their market won't buy as big a, distribution deal. However, given how Screenlife works, the whole film can be catered to that specific market and they can feel like it's theirs. The whole interface can be changed. Now, I'm definitely not the right person to talk about diversity, but while we're on the subject of larger markets, by looking at the implementation of diversity in general in the industry and hopefully how we're moving forward and making those leaps, I think it's an interesting point to mention here. And I mean this in a general sense of diversity through minorities generally. But if we look at the casting of John Cho here, the box office for his home country in South Korea was incredible. Not only is it the right thing to do as artists, but it's backed by financial reward. The South Korean box office for Searching was 22 million out of a 75 million pound global box office return. In comparison to that 22 million, the UK's box office for Searching was 2 million. So you can see how that has a huge benefit globally. Now, in a completely different aspect of diversity, rather than, in that sense, disability and how people with disabilities use the internet or devices as a means to improve their life is fascinating. Now, anyone who's watched Unfriended Dark Web will know what I'm talking about here. Amaya, who's a character in the film, is deaf. This added so many layers and allowed me to venture as an audience member into that world, which I hadn't considered. These out-of-the-box ideas for storytelling is where Screenlife can really shine. It's also not just a benefit of the internet to that person, but also what do they struggle with as someone who has a disability. So let's take an example of a traditional story, which we can turn into a Screenlife film. Ivan mentioned Romeo and Juliet and delved into that. But let's try and take something that hasn't been made, that's totally fresh eyes that we can come up with. And hopefully this idea will help you transfer your own ideas into Screenlife. Now, we probably all know Shakespeare's Othello. It's been done time and time again, but this example, we can demonstrate how we can breathe new life into this language. With a film which, it's a whole idea, we've had Black Lives Matter, immigration, general racial divides. So Othello could be easily translated into the modern context and be so relevant to today. So this is the story in its simplest form. Othello, who is a black man in a culture of white dominance, is given a promotion, and his friend Iago is passed over for one. So Iago decides to destroy Othello by feeding him lies and acting deceitful to eventually try to take his place. So for this example, let's put Othello in a modern context. A school setting, Othello has been given head of school, and Iago believes he shouldn't have been given that role. So in the original, Othello, Iago kind of shouts up to Desdemona's father, who's a white girl whose father is an elder in the community, to try and destroy Othello. He starts shouting, your daughter's having a relationship with Othello, he's having sex with her right now. given the racism in the community, this was incredibly, awful. But in a Screenlife film, Iago could do the same by taking a picture of the two, or taking a picture from Instagram and sending that via email, encrypted or what have you, to the father. It's that type of thinking. So, even if he wanted to talk about, so later on in the play, he starts telling Othello that he's been cheated on, so he can forge messages, he can do all sorts and start to create deceit there. So this is just one example of how you can translate that. So after we mentioned last week, this idea of intimate stories versus high concept, and I just thought it was important to know, you don't have to do one or the other. It's completely up to you. Whether you're telling a story about a friend who's in the space station calling his wife who's at home, or you can really do that high concept while also doing a film about a relationship breaking up. Feel free to do whatever you feel is right. We have to be authentic, express our own ideas on screen. Sometimes it means we have to plagiarize from our own lives. So feel free to tell your own personal stories. They may be more impactful than something fictitious. Now, if anyone finds the origins of storytelling interesting, here's some great books here that really helped me translate the origins of Screenlife, of storytelling generally, and turn that into Screenlife. Sorry, I know I'm in a rush now. I'm just going to leave you on this. I had this quote in my head for a while, and whether it's something I agree with, I'm not quite sure, but I'd be curious on what your thoughts are, and I'd like to leave you on it. The problem with phones is that we spend less time fantasizing. It fantasizes for you. So is this true? And if that is the case, what does that mean for how we tell stories? Okay, I've done that much quicker than I thought. I've tried to rush through it. So thank you.
Oh God. Well, you know what? As always, Nick, just let me put my video on. That was just truly brilliant. Of course it was. You were really, really great. However, we have ran over. Now it's 1 minute to 8. And there's a couple of people saying they've got to leave for 8. Now I'm gonna run through this really, really quickly. Of course, we'll find some time to ask questions, and if there's any questions whatsoever, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. We're not going to be able to cover the pitches session, so what I'm going to suggest is that if anybody has any questions or any reservations about pitching the projects next week, if anybody needs any help or assistance in coming up with a concept, or if they'd like to pitch, or if they don't want to pitch, then please get in touch with me. My email address and my phone number is available as well. There's another thing I want to mention before I'm going to hand over to Martin, because he's got some very important things to tell you about. I had a very long conversation with Timur yesterday about the pitching sessions, and about where we're headed, and about what we're going to be doing. And what he would like me to do is set up a WhatsApp group with him in it, so that you can talk about your ideas in the WhatsApp group. You can text him personally, whatever, whatever happens in a WhatsApp group happens. But I'd like you to send over your permission for me to add you into the WhatsApp group, because not everybody likes it, not everybody engages. Sometimes they get on my nerves as well, because sometimes anyhow, the WhatsApp group for me, if I can help you with your pitches, any questions whatsoever. Next week we will have Maria with us, who is the head of international operations for Screenlife. She is going to talk just briefly about her experience of the format, and then we are going to do pitches. So next week is going to be more about us engaging with each other than it is just listening to people talk at you. So the plan was for me not to talk, anybody to talk at you, but for us to talk together. However, it's happened again. Martin, you've got a really important announcement to make as well. Sorry, guys.
Sorry, I'll try and be quick, given that we're right up against time. But a couple of things I want to mention. One is the forms that are coming your way from the DFE, asking all sorts of questions. Now, this isn't because people are being nosy about you. It's the DFE have a terrible history of not having information about the courses that they fund, and they've really cracked down on this round of funding for the digital